Good evening, everybody. I'm Josh Welsh, president of FiLM Independent, and welcome to FiLM Independent Presents at the Wallace. Yes, we are so happy to be here tonight, and it's wonderful to see you all, to be back in person, celebrating the kickoff of award season, and more importantly than that, great cinema. Before we get started, I just have a couple quick remarks. First of all, I want to thank our lead sponsor, the HFPA. I want to thank our evening sponsor, Netflix. And above all, I want to thank the Wallace Annenberg Center for the Performing Arts. You guys are a beautiful home, and we love being here, so thank you. And special thanks to the Wallace's artistic director, Paul Cruz. Yes, clap, clap, clap. I just want to say, we've been here all week doing great programming here. We could not be more excited for tonight's conversation between Maggie Gyllenhaal and Stacey Wilson Hunt. You're really in for a treat. At FiLM Independent, Maggie Gyllenhaal is an actor we have long admired. She was first nominated for a Spirit Award back with Secretary, but so many indelible and brave performances since then. I don't need to give you all the list. But now with her directorial debut, we really could not be more excited and honored to have her here as part of our program. Tomorrow night, we wrap out our programming at the Wallace with not one, but two live reads of classic screenplays. So if you don't know about these, I'm quickly going to tell you, please get tickets and come back tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, we're doing a live read of Sunset Boulevard, directed by Marlee Matlin, and we will have a cast of both deaf and hearing actors and ASL interpreters. So it's going to be a completely new, I've never seen a live read like this, and whoever comes, I hope you all do, is in for a treat. Then tomorrow evening, we are wrapping out our programming here at the Wallace with a live read of LA Story, celebrating its 30th anniversary, and it will be directed by Marvin Lemus, the creator of Hentified, and that will also be a great night. So come back tomorrow. Please join me in welcoming Stacey Wilson Hunt.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Isn't it nice to be out and away from your spouses and kids and the apartments and homes that no longer feel fun and welcoming? Yes. I'm so honored to be here tonight. Maggie is one of not only my favorite performers and artists, but just such an incredible person and so kind and honest and deserving of everything that she is about to receive in terms of her career, which is wonderful. We were both saying backstage that we both get nervous for these things, even though we've each done them a million times. And I like to think it's because we care a lot, and we want you to have a good time, and we also just want to have a good conversation. So we decided to just be loose and conversational.
Yeah, it's also kind of a weird thing to do.
It's a slightly weird thing to do. And also, you're still quite young, and so to be reflecting on a career when it's still very much in motion. So this is not, we're not saying you're old at all. You're still very young, so do not worry. So we have so much to get through tonight, so I'd love to just start and jump in right away to one of my favorite movies, which at the time I didn't really get, and I still don't, but I love, which is Donnie Darko, 2001, directed by Richard Kelly, the writer and director. And I'd love to toss to a clip of a very memorable scene of Maggie at the dinner table with someone else you might recognize.
I'm voting for Dukakis.
Well, maybe when you have children of your own who need braces and you can't afford them because half of your husband's paycheck goes to the federal government, you'll regret that.
My husband's paycheck?
Oh. Huh.
Anyway, I'm not gonna squeeze one out till I'm like 30.
Will you still be working at the yarn barn? Because I hear that's a really great place to raise children.
That's really funny.
No, I think a year of partying's enough. She'll be going to Harvard next fall.
I haven't even gotten in yet.
Do you honestly think Michael Dukakis will provide for this country till you're ready to squeeze one out?
Yeah, I do.
When can I squeeze one out?
Not until 8th grade.
Excuse me.
Donnie, you're such a dick.
Whoa, Elizabeth. A little hostile there. Maybe you should be the one in therapy, then Mom and Dad can pay someone $200 an hour to listen to all your thoughts. so we don't have to.
Okay. You want to tell Mom and Dad why you stopped taking your medication?
You're such a fuck ass.
Please.
Did you just call me a fuck ass?
Elizabeth, that's enough.
You can go suck a fuck.
Oh, please tell me, Elizabeth, how exactly does one suck a fuck?
You want me to tell you?
Please tell me.
We will not have this at the dinner table. Stop.
What's a fuck ass?
So there's so much about this movie that is monumental. The fact that it came out around 9/11, which I know is very hard for its success at the box office. There was some imagery in the film that I know is troubling for the marketing. But it went on to have an incredible run and still does as a cult classic. So I'm so glad it was made, and I'm so glad it still has legs, as they say. And on the occasion of the 20th anniversary, or an anniversary recently, Jake, your brother, told The Guardian, which I find this so fascinating. He said, "Maggie and I were going through a competitive phase at that time. She was the reason I got into acting and was the more formidable of the two of us. Yet I was the one who started my career first. So imagine being in a movie with your obnoxious little brother as the lead character." So firstly, I'm wondering, does this track with your recollection of the way you were interacting with him at the time? And was it therapeutic for you to be able to say, "Go suck a fuck" on screen and get paid to say that?
Yeah, I guess we were so young. I mean, we were, I don't know, like, I was like 21 maybe. What I think looking at the scene is that, like, I'd done a few things, like, well, like, you're in high school and you're an actress, or you're in college and you're doing things and they mean everything to you, and you're able to express yourself somehow, even though they're, just in high school or college or whatever. And then you're a jobbing actress and you're trying to get work, and like for me, I had, I played the best friend in 40 Days and 40 Nights, or like, I don't know, whatever, riding cards with boys. I had this tiny part. And there was no way to do what I thought acting was, which was kind of like express myself, like learn something. And so this movie too, I just had a little part, but in that scene with Jake, and I don't think it's particularly because we were competitive or something. I think it's because he's a really good actor. All of a sudden it was alive. Like all of a sudden, I was like, God, how do you make it alive when you have nothing,
Right.
And that's continued to be a question. Like sometimes you're like, oh, this scene doesn't work at all. How do you make it alive? But because I was acting with Jake, I remember I was like, ooh, this is jamming.
Did you feel like I have to up my game a little bit to sort of match wits with him?
No, I just felt like this is acting. Like, oh, here we are. This is acting. This is what I know acting to be. And I don't think at that point, I mean, I was doing Closer in like regional theater. That's what I was doing at the time in Berkeley. I did it in LA at the Mark Taper. And that was a real part. And that was put on film. And I didn't have anything to work with. I didn't know how to make something alive without it already kind of being great at the time. And so what I just feel like, I was like, oh, here we are. Here's something to do,
And also probably helped, Richard Kelly was 25 at the time.
Oh, really?
So here's a guy
He seemed
who,
old to me.
and he definitely has an old soul for sure. And
I'm kidding, because I was 21.
Well, of course, 4 years older, of course. But it maybe helped that here was a guy who was also learning alongside of you, and maybe he trusted obviously he cast the movie very well, and he thought, okay, these people know what they're doing. I'm going to let them do what I hired them to do.
Yeah, he did. You're right. And that does
That's
take
huge.
like real, that takes confidence.
For sure, absolutely. So I'll never forget seeing Secretary at the Angelica in New York, and my roommate at the time, who's a filmmaker now. And I walked out onto the street, and I was like, oh my God, what did I just watch? And it was so affecting, and I was so proud of whoever was able to get that on screen. It was so brave. And we have to give, of course, credit to Aaron Cressida Wilson, who wrote the script, and Steven Shainberg, who directed it. So I remember when the Me Too movement started, there was some renewed interest in this movie. And I'm wondering now, almost 20 years later, do you see it differently, and does it feel different to you? Because it's almost harder to watch that scene in our current climate. Even though we know they had a connection and they actually had a love for each other, it feels harder to me than it did 20 years ago. How does it feel to you?
It doesn't feel harder to me. No, I think it's dangerous, and it was dangerous then, and I'm really proud of that. I think it asks a really, really complicated question. I mean, okay, I was looking at that scene and I was thinking, I've thought about, now that I am a director, I think in some ways, looking back on my work as an actress, I've often thought about my work directorially. And if you look at that scene, and there's that scene of that little shot of our hands, and I put my finger over James Spader's finger. Now that is massively important to the storytelling here, because
Was that in the script?
no, but it was happening every time when we shot.
That's the whole scene.
And I said
Wow.
to Steve Shainberg, "You got to get this." And I was a baby, but like he knew he's an incredibly smart, very, very interesting director, but he didn't know that was happening. He and I were very much on the same page about what the story was about. So the story is it's like almost like an unsolvable puzzle at this moment. What do you do with a character who is actually made alive, empowered, turned on in every way by this relationship with her boss? It doesn't fit into a black and white way of looking at the world. And I'm really proud of that.
And she's an adult too. This isn't, she's not a 16-year-old, and that becomes a little bit dodgier and kind of more icky to talk about. She's an adult person.
Yeah.
Right. She's making these choices on her own to engage in this.
Yeah.
Right.
So what do you do with that right now?
Right.
Politically, I think it is, what's different is it's much more dangerous now than it would. I mean, I don't know if there'd be space for this movie now. I don't know.
And yet Netflix has shows that talk about BDSM, and this has become actually an accepted form of a fringe lifestyle that as long as people are consenting, and I think that's really the word that we've all come to better understand is consent is all of it. So in this scene, we see two consenting adults.
Well, that's why that shot is cannot be taken out of that scene.
Yeah, I didn't realize that wasn't in the script. That's amazing.
That shot just sort of is the argument against any political problem in terms of whether or not that's what she wants. That is what she wants, and that's what this is. A dead person who's made alive by this relationship. What do you do with that politically? Right. I mean, it's dangerous territory.
And who are we to judge that healing process for her?
Exactly,
Right?
for someone else, any more than any other choice that people want to make about their sexuality,
Right?
Or the way they live their life, or the way they love, or who they love.
Definitely worth a reviewing if people have time.
I haven't seen it in a long time, but
It's still great, and again, gives us a lot more to think about now. So the On to Sherrybaby, one of my other favorite performances, 2006, written, directed by Laurie Collier. And I know this movie had a very small budget. I read $2 million. Does that sound accurate?
I mean, I thought it was I think it was 1.3.
Okay. You probably had to wear your own clothes and
Yeah.
source a lot of your own props and stuff.
Yeah.
So for those who haven't seen the movie, it is just so spectacular. But she has just gotten out of prison. She's trying to reclaim her life, trying to reclaim her daughter, and make herself living on the straight and narrow, which, as we see, is not easy. What kind of research did you do into the nuances of that release experience? Because we see her at the parole office, we see her meeting with her sponsor. It's a lot of sort of banal sort of paperwork that people have to go through, which I really enjoyed. What did you learn about that process?
Oh my God, it's funny when you say that. I can hear myself in the press junket from 2006. I don't really remember.
I was not there, so I'm not taking what you said.
No, but what kind of research did I do? I did do research. I hung out with Laurie Collier, who was the director, and we went to this prison on 20th Street and the West Side Highway, and I don't think it's a prison anymore, a women's prison. I spent time at all these halfway houses. I went to these parole places. I met a lot of women. It was really helpful But then I remember Lori telling me that she thought I should like sleep in my bathtub. Because, I mean, this is just like a difference in craft in a way. She was like, I think you should sleep in your bathtub.
Like to make you feel really sore and uncomfortable?
To make me feel really tired and really sore like she was. And I was like, Lori, there is no way I'm going to be able to play this part in this $1.3 million budget where we shot like 6-day weeks for like 2 minutes. If I sleep in my fucking bathtub, like, are you kidding me? Like, I got to sleep in my bed, you know?
That's interesting. So she wanted you to even go even further than you had already put in the work to do, right?
Well, no, like, yes, the research was really helpful. And I think in some ways, like, sometimes I think as an actress, I like being a little bit of a bad student. Like, I'll do some research, but so much of what's a pleasure is the imagination, is the fiction. But in this case, I did a lot of research, and she was right. Because it was a world that I really didn't know about, you know, and to really give these women respect, I had to learn about them. But then I was like, then I'm gonna sleep in my bed and take care of myself as best I can.
Fair enough, and no one is judging you for not sleeping in your bed. And then the final scene we see in that package was from Away We Go, 2009, written by Dave Eggers and Vendela Vida, and of course directed by Sam Mendes, which is a very different movie for him. But it's interesting, you spoke earlier about wanting that theater experience, and I'm wondering, what did you get from him with his being a theater person from a director that maybe you hadn't gotten until that point?
Wait, what was I saying about the theater experience?
Oh, you were saying that you were
doing Closer.
Right.
Oh,
so
yeah.
was he able to kind of give you that theatrical experience that you'd been wanting in terms of his style on set?
No, Away We Go was basically like, I had a little baby. I think
Was that your baby? Is there a baby in that scene?
That's a doll.
Okay.
You can like see its hand is just like this hard doll.
I was trying to see.
It's also my really good friend who's playing my husband.
Yes. That was Josh Hamilton, right?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
He's like one of my best girlfriend's husbands.
Oh,
yeah.
Cute. Well, he was very convincing as your husband.
Yeah. But so I think I was doing Batman, maybe, or I don't know. So many people out here, just a couple people know me. At some point, Sam was just like out of the blue was like, "Will you come do a couple of days on this movie?"
Okay.
Or maybe Peter was doing an education. I had been in London doing one of those things, and he said, "Will you come do a couple of days?" And so it was actually like really playful.
It's definitely one of the most overtly comedic roles I've seen. I mean, that is absurd what we just saw. I mean, that's very, very funny.
I was like living in Brooklyn with a baby in whatever this was. I was like kind of sort of, I mean, obviously I'm making fun of, but
But that's what I was going to ask.
there was
this
a
satire,
tiny little bit of me. I mean, just a little.
Did you use a stroller when your children were
Yeah, I
babies?
did. I used a fucking stroller.
Okay.
I mean, yeah,
You cannot live in New York and not use a
but
stroller.
just a little, you know, it's like you're like, only organic food, of course. And then you get stuck on an airplane in a, snowstorm, and you're like, just the kid needs potato chips. Like, it doesn't, So I've definitely like come down to earth a lot since I had a 6-month-old or whatever it was.
Certainly. And also with the second baby, I've heard that maybe things become a little bit more relaxed after the first.
Yeah, well, when we talk about The Lost Daughter, we can get into this. I no longer have such an idealized perspective on any of it.
We're going to do a deep dive into motherhood in a little bit, I'm sure.
I think, it's interesting. You were asking me before about what research I did for Sherrybaby. And I look at those two scenes, and I think it was around that period of time that I really learned how to work. Like how and it makes me think of my acting teacher who died as an old woman. I don't know, many years ago, maybe 5, 6 even, I don't know. Anyway, weirdly enough, before I met her, she was working with Steve Shainberg on Secretary. So some of the incredible notes I was getting from him, I'm sure were coming from Penny. She then became this like really powerful force in my life and an incredible teacher. But just like any teacher, just like anyone who's offering you something, like you have to know how to receive it in order for it to have any value, really.
And you have to be ready too, right?
Yeah. Right. So, of course, I'm so helped by her without even knowing it in Secretary. She totally helped me. In Sherrybaby, I remember struggling with a scene. And she said, I don't know, maybe I said, one of us said, I just can't find my heart. And she mailed me a stone heart.
Oh,
And
sweet.
and anyway, whatever, it's still by my bedside table. But these scenes, I look at them and I think, okay, that first scene, that was one of the first scenes we shot.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I remember afterwards, Jeff said, and we were just getting to know each other, and we had to, like, in order for that movie to work, those characters had to be in love. It has to be a tragic love story. If you're not rooting for them, even though they're totally wrong for each other, and he's a drunk and he's 30
Right.
years older than her, and
Right.
it's, then you don't have a movie really. And we knew that, and so we knew we had to create that love. And so this was one of the first scenes we did.
Wow.
And he said, afterward, that was like watching somebody be born. But the thing is
amazing.
that scene is just this very simple scene, but Penny, my teacher, I didn't know if I told you her name's Penny. Penny Allen, she opened it up for me like a geode. And same with that scene in the Honourable Woman. That scene doesn't read on the page like that. But we together, and again, like in a way that is directorial. And there are some actors that are just naturally directorial. Like what I mean by that, by the way, okay, I'm just gonna like veer off slightly. I don't know if you've seen I May Destroy You. I haven't seen all of it. I just started it, and then my husband and I were in 2 different cities, and we couldn't watch it without each other because we started it together.
Yes, we understand that.
But so I think at least the first 5 or 6, she didn't direct. She wrote them, I know. I noticed later she co-directed them. But I think she is an incredibly intelligent actress, and I think she's a directorial actress. For example, there's a scene where she has to take a morning after pill, and she plays the scene like she's popping a Tic Tac, and she's got her potato chips, and she's drinking her soda, and it's no big deal, and her friend calls her, what's up, no big deal at all. And that reveals totally how painful it is for her. Whereas if she had played like 99.9% of the actresses, probably like myself, the scene with just a little bit of sadness or whatever, you lost me in terms of actually feeling something for her. So that's an example of what I mean. And Penny, this teacher, taught me that. She taught me my point of view, my need, the reason I wanted to do this movie, the reason why this movie, of all the movies in the universe, came to me right now, is because there's something I have to learn and I have to express by doing it. And otherwise, what am I doing? Who cares? And that's why, and we can talk about this with The Lost Daughter too, loving an actor, or as an actor, being loved. Scott Cooper, one time, I was getting ready to do a scene in the motel room with Jeff, and it was like one of the first real scenes. It was after this one, and it was going okay, but I was a little tight. And Scott came over to me and said, Maggie, I love you. And not creepy, not like, just he did. And truly, I think if you're loved, you can feel safe to go beyond what you know about yourself and learn something on screen instead of pretending to learn something on screen. And I think especially in that Honourable Woman scene, that's happening, and it's, and also Hugo Blick was this director who gave me
Such a powerhouse.
Yeah,
He's
wrote,
amazing.
directed,
Yeah.
basically edited, although I think someone else had an editing credit, produced. But he gave me respect, space, and love in his own way.
This dude's a trip if you ever get a chance
He's
to
a
meet him.
trip. He's a trip, but I love him too.
No, he's an amazing auteur. In terms of Crazy Heart, what's so interesting to me is it's the first time you got what we'll call like traditional sort of commercial acclaim in the form of an Academy Award nomination. And for me, this is one of your more commercial roles in the sense that woman falls for guy and life is disrupted, et cetera, which is so not Maggie Gyllenhaal to me. Like Maggie Gyllenhaal does not fall in love with men and change her career or get affected by that kind of stuff. So it's interesting that the Academy was like, yes, this is the one for Maggie, and not Secretary, which I think is insanely audacious and brave, what you did. Did it feel like almost a reprieve to be able to play a part like Jean, to finally just be like, I'm just going to be a woman who's sort of doing her best and just kind of give into that, and Jeff being so wonderful and supportive? Did it feel almost like a vacation from some of that really sort of grueling indie work you'd been doing before that?
That's an interesting question. I mean, it was made as an indie movie, you know, very small budget, same kind of feeling, right? Not like Sherrybaby, that was crazy. That was
You at least had $2.5 million on this movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was like it was like functional but small movie.
But it got a lot of awards push. Jeff
Yeah,
ended up winning. Like,
I think I didn't not think of it like that. I think that character was like, she was like a heart. She was like a beating heart. She was soft. She was like love, you know? Right. She was, not hard.
Right. She was a romantic.
She, like, beyond that, she's just a heart.
Just like what sits next to your bed, right? And for Honourable Woman, this was obviously your first foray into television, seriously, like serialized TV, and something so dense and complex. I was saying earlier that I'm still processing this show. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, my God, it's so, I learned so much about the world. I was very tested as a viewer. What did you learn about yourself making that series that empowered you to take more risks afterwards?
I think I had I was 35, I turned 36, and I actually think everything in my life changed around making that show. Not because of like that show, I grew up. It's funny, I've heard my actresses, my Dakota and Jessie have said things like that about The Lost Daughter, that they felt in some ways they grew up. I felt that way about The Honourable Woman, and I really had, well, what makes me think of, like, I had a 14-month-old.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know how old was Ramona, 7, in London. I had learned something. I went to make Frank without Peter. I took the girls. Gloria was 6 months old. I had my nanny with me, but, like, everyone got sick and was throwing up. And, like, I went to Ireland to shoot it 2 days before we were going to start shooting, and I was like, as I was walking in the hallway trying to get Gloria to go to sleep, I was like, never again. If I come to Europe, I'm coming 2 weeks early, and everyone's going to get settled, and So anyway, we were in London. We got kind of settled, and I went to the first day of work.
This is on Honourable Woman now.
On Honourable Woman, and I kind of got. After work, I kind of got panicked. Actually, I think it was maybe the third day of work. I had like an actual little panic. I was like, how am I going to manage this? I've made movies that are 2 hours long. This is 8 hours.
8 hours.
And it's incredibly demanding. And
accent work too. I mean, that's like a whole other layer.
That was nothing compared to all the stuff I had to do.
Taking care of your kids, right?
I kind of liked that. I kind of like wish I had an English accent, really, but
you're very good at it, by the way.
That was the salve. No, but I called a friend of mine who reminded me. She was like, you have a 14-month-old, a 7-year-old, you're in a foreign country, you are taking on something you've never done before. She said, it makes total sense that you're scared. But you just have to go to work like one day at a time, and that really helped me. Then I was like, right, I don't have to make the whole movie right now or the whole television show right now. I just have to make it one piece at a time. And I felt that for whatever reason, learning how to work, my teacher also, her husband died at around that time, and she really wanted to work, and so she and I sort of met at this amazing place where I wanted to work and she wanted to work, and the part for some reason just hit me at a moment where I needed to learn something, and it took me kind of across a little bridge where I feel like I became a woman.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
great. An honorable woman, you might say. I really feel like The Deuce is one of HBO's kind of underdog, unsung shows. I remember when it was airing, I would tell people, why are you guys not watching this? And it really is worth revisiting or even just seeing for the first time. It's really great. David Simon and George Pelecanos, of course. And you played Eileen/Candy, depending on the scene. And this show seemed the perfect fit for you based on the conversations that we've had in the past about nudity and sex on screen. And in 2015, you told me the following, which I love. You said, quote, "I've never been the hot girl who was asked to take her clothes off on the first day of work. And if I've ever done nudity, there's always something else that the scene was about. I want to see what a woman looks like who's my age. I'm much more turned on when I see shows where bodies look like bodies I recognize." And I love that so much because it's still so novel. And I love all the women in this show because they embodied every look, every size, every age, every race, and it really brought a humanity to sex work that I still think is an ever-evolving conversation. And your character was loosely based on a woman named Candida. And she was a sex-positive feminist pornographer in the 70s. And I'm wondering, in your research on her and other women at the time who did that work, how did your understanding about this movement, whether it be on the street or on film, how did it deepen your understanding about this important work that women have done since the beginning of time?
Women have had no access to the economic side of things. Didn't have for many, many years. And so in order to survive, we used everything we had in our toolbox. I mean, in some ways, Jane Austen is an economic conversation. I mean, I'm obviously not the first person to say that it is, and the value, so much of a woman's value is her sexuality. So I guess I can see that there's a difference between actually having sex with somebody for money and knowing that if you dress a certain way, that the likelihood of you getting a job is higher. But I think they're in the same category. And I'm not talking like, you wear super short skirt and you're basically saying like, maybe you can fuck me. I'm talking like just a good bra. It's true. I'm just trying to be honest, and I think so some part of our value, because, whatever it was, we couldn't have credit cards until 1970, whatever, we couldn't vote until 100 years ago, included using our sexuality, because why wouldn't we? We had so little. It's not like we all decided.
It's all we had, really.
Well, it's one of the things that we had, and so it's not like everyone was like, this is how I'd love to do things. But if you're backed into a corner and, then I think you're going to use whatever you can to get out of it. And so, yeah, that's what I think. And that's one of the things I think about, like how we all can relate to sex work. I also really think Candy was an artist, and probably is a nice way to end up talking about the next thing. Like Candy was originally meant to be a prostitute who was money-minded, who became a producer in the porn industry and became a kind of relatively successful producer because she was a money-minded person. And I just kept saying to David and George, she's got to be an artist. She's got to be an artist, because if money is life or death, who the fuck are you? If art is life or death for you, and for someone like this who has nothing, and all of a sudden she's made alive by going to shoot a porn and like going, oh my God, whoa, this thing I've been doing over and over and over again for the past 10 years, if you put a frame around it and light it, it's something completely different. All of this is light. Her mind is woken up by that. And then it becomes life and death for her. So I was pushing like, she's a director. She's got to be a director. Here's why, and I would write these emails and I would like, I'm sure I was really irritated.
I'm sure they loved that, by the way. Well, I have a question
know.
for season 1. So she has a son who's being raised by her parents because clearly she's an unfit mom. So was that the driving force for her to go straight and go legit so she could get her son back?
No, she doesn't go straight.
Right,
Her son,
right.
honestly, she's like,
She didn't seem too distracted
it really
by
wasn't
him.
on my mind, her son, anyway.
Right.
I mean, like, I know that was like part of the
But I'm
thing.
saying that would be an easy crutch for,
No,
for
she
the writers.
wanted to
right.
she wanted to be a director,
Right.
and she had no access to anything except porn. So she's like, "Great, let's film porn."
Right.
Like and so then, in the same way, I'm saying like I learned something about myself doing The Honourable Woman, but it was much more kind of like unconscious. And I was like, I'm a director. I knew I was. I just didn't feel entitled to even let myself think it. And when I got to pretend and imagine, not pretend, that's not the word, imagine, fantasize, think about it, how would I shoot this scene? You know,
I was going to ask, was there a meta experience for you playing
yes,
Candy?
That's what I'm saying. Of course,
Right.
yes. I was like, this is my job.
Right.
This is what I should be doing, you know, and I think getting to sort of explore that by playing Candy made me brave enough to risk wanting that myself.
And to think what those women went through to be able to do their jobs
mean,
at
that
a time was
yeah.
even, barely even a notion for people to
There's
do that.
actually a great scene that's like almost all on the cutting room floor in the Deuce with Dagmara Dominchik, who is in my film, The Lost Daughter.
She's so good.
Oh, she's so good. And Dag and I play the scene where she is kind of like a slasher director. She did do porn, this character, and then gets one step up into like New York underground slasher movies. And I'm like, how the hell did you do it? You know, I mean, there's nothing open for them. No, you know.
I love that. It really is life imitating art, imitating life. I'm not sure, but something sort of meta and circular.
But it's all like, I look at all these things, I'm like, that's me,
Right.
you know.
It's all you, all
yes,
of it.
because fiction gives you courage. Fiction gives you bravery. If you just try to like say, this is who I am and this is what's on my mind, it's way scarier than I'm protected by fiction. But they're all me, you know.
Well, and the film for which we're here tonight, The Lost Daughter. So I'm just curious, how many people here have seen the movie? Okay, good. So I'm going to try for no major spoilers because that is not nice. But we'll just try to talk about it in kind of more theoretical terms because I want. No, that's good though. I'm so excited for you to see it too. We see so much in advance. It's kind of like that anticipation. It's very special. So before we talk about The Lost Daughter, I want to get back to something we touched on earlier, which is the concept of motherhood and the theme of motherhood, which is so prevalent in your work. And I'd like to know, what is your relationship with motherhood, both as a child, being raised by an artistic mother, an amazing mother, and also your experience with your children. And you gave us a great anecdote about just how hard it was to be a working artist during those early years. So how would you describe your relationship with parenting, I guess, in a general sense? It's a big, big question, I know.
I don't think that's an answerable question, I've been thinking. I think this might be a dangerous thing to say. I'm curious to try it out.
It's a safe space.
Okay, so I was thinking about Rebecca Hall's film. I haven't not seen Passing yet.
Passing.
But I know her and I know a lot about it. And as far as I understand, her mother was half black. And so Rebecca, a professional, educated, intelligent woman who's not got her apron strings tied to the stove, whatever, she gets to make a film, her first film, and she makes a film, I mean, not exactly about her mother.
Right. Based on the book, but certainly
clearly from like the
themes that-
waterfall of
Right.
the domestic and her
Right.
relationship to her mother.
Right.
In some way, right? I don't know. Was just thinking about this last night while I was falling asleep. And my film, me too, you know, my grandmother and my great aunt were a pediatrician and a lawyer in the 40s and 50s. And my mother, as you said, is a professional, a thinker. She went to Barnard, and she's a writer and a producer, and me too, right? I also am a professional, and yet when I am given the space to make a film about whatever I want, it's in the realm of the domestic. And I believe that women make movies that are different than men. I think they write books that are different than men. And
Which is
not
wonderful.
everybody
Yeah.
believes that. I did this really interesting interview with Rachel Kushner, who's a brilliant writer. I mean, amazing. And I said that to her, and she said, I really don't agree with you. So fine. So it's not like this is the truth, but this is what I believe. I think when women are making films or whatever they're doing, and they're really listening to themselves, their unconscious, their conscious, their intellectual mind, their artistic mind, their erotic mind, it's different, and the work looks different. I was even just thinking, like, I mean, Laurie Collier made Sherrybaby, but like this movie looks so different, like
Different from.
from the ones before.
Right.
But
It's true.
so I'm just interested in some kind of tribal way that I didn't even know, I think, in the domestic.
And femininity. Is that a part
Well,
of
what
the
I'm
domestic when you say
wondering
that?
is if that is common to many women. I'm also interested in other things. I'm interested in a lot of other things. But my identity as a mother and as a daughter and as a woman is like a massive part of who I am. Even though my film, nobody's seen it, but you'll see, like there's a lot of ambivalence.
But there's a lot of dissonance about that relationship.
This is
right?
this is no fantasy version of motherhood. Like,
No.
but that's my experience too, Anyway, I'm just sort of like starting to think about this and what that means, that for me, if I get to talk about whatever I want right now at 43, it's got to do with my mother, it's got to do with my children, it's got to do with my relationship to those relationships.
Good answer. Thank you. And so for those who don't know, the film is based on Elena Ferrante's book. And for those who don't know, that's actually a pseudonym. We don't know the author's real identity, which for me makes this that much more compelling. It casts a pall of like a specter of just like even more, I don't know, it makes it feel more foreboding. Does that make sense? It kind of like hangs heavier for me, not knowing that this person is out there, but you're the transmitter of this story, which I think is very brave of you, actually. And you said recently of Elena, you said that she lives in my fantasy life, which I thought this is very cool. She's this wise older woman who gives me freedom and confidence, and she knew the only way for this movie to be successful was for it to be mine. And she wouldn't offer this freedom to a man, but she knew that she had to offer it to me.
Well, she wrote me that.
Right,
She
which is
wrote
amazing.
This piece in The Guardian as I was adapting. Okay, she did a couple of things. Yes, she's anonymous. I don't know who she is. All of my interactions with her have been through email. First, I wrote to her and I appealed to her for the rights. And, I wrote a letter.
And how did you get her email? I'm so fascinated by this process.
Well, my brilliant producers, one of whom is in the audience right now, talked to her publishers.
Okay.
I don't have her email.
Sure, so somebody's communicating for her.
I have the
essentially.
email of her. There's one couple, a husband and wife, who own Europa Editions, who are the sort of business liaison between Ferrante and the world.
Amazing. Mm-hmm.
So I wrote to them, and they got her the email, or my letter. And I said, not what I was going to do, because I didn't know, but why I wanted to do it, which, I can tell you if we have time, which was, basically I read her work. I don't know how many of you have read Ferrante, probably many more than have seen my film so far, but when I read her, I had this feeling like, well, first I thought, this character is so fucked up. And then within 5 seconds of thinking that, I thought, oh no, I really relate to her. So.
And you said, what does that say about me?
Right.
No.
So am I so fucked up? Or, in fact, are all of these things that she's touching upon and writing about a common experience that nobody's talking about. And that, in fact, so there's this mixture of feeling disturbed and really comforted. And I thought, what if instead of all of us, because her books really are flying off the shelves, instead of all of us having this sort of secret feeling alone in our rooms, when these kind of agreed upon, these things we've agreed not to talk about, she breaks this agreement and says them out loud. Instead of us having this kind of electrifying feeling alone in our rooms, what if it was actually said out loud? What if I could put these things on screen and create? I mean, the amazing thing about a movie theater is that it's both a personal experience and a communal one. And you might be sitting next to your mother or your husband or your sister, hearing these things said out loud. And that seemed to me like a really radical thing to try to do. So I appealed to her with that idea in a way. And she said, and I said I wanted to direct it. And she said, yes, you can have the rights, but the contract is void unless you direct it. Which was this kind of, because she's anonymous, she was just this like kind of cosmic vote of confidence from out somewhere in the universe, feminine cosmic vote of confidence. Then she writes this letter in The Guardian. She writes a bi-weekly piece in The Guardian. I'm doing my adaptation, and I just get this. Well, I get all these emails from my friends in the UK and my Israeli producers being like, read The Guardian. And she wrote this thing saying that she thinks that it's, as much as she would like the movie to stay within the parameters of her book, that she knows that for all women, that it's important that the movie be good. And that the only way that it will be good really is if it's mine. And so she wants to offer me freedom. And she says, if I was a man, that she wouldn't offer me that freedom, that it's because I'm a woman and a woman artist that she's offering it to me. And in fact, you guys haven't seen the movie, but there's this brilliant actress in it, this Italian actress, Alba Rohrwacher, and she's married to Saverio Costanza, who is the man that adapted and directed My Brilliant Friend for HBO. And so I've gotten to know him, and he's fantastic, and he was like, oh no, it's absolutely true. He's like, every day I had an email in my inbox from Elena Ferrante.
Well, that's what I was thinking, what his experience was now hearing this.
He said they co-wrote. He said,
Okay.
he said in some ways, like it was like co-writing, because she was so involved. So she means what she says. And then just to finish her, you know, that it's not that she lives in her anonymity has allowed her to be a kind of a fantasy. If I knew she was with all her human flaws and what, you know, maybe it wouldn't be as effective. But in the end, the script and the movie are very, very different from the book. I absolutely think that they're in conversation with the book, but they're very different. Notably, and I won't give anything away, the last line of the film is basically the opposite of the book. I have a kind of endless respect for Elena Ferrante. Not kind of. I have endless respect for Elena Ferrante, and I really tried to understand the last line of the book, and I kind of do now, but I decided to change it. And when she read the script, she said, I see what you did with the end, and I love it.
Ah, that's amazing. You must have felt much more relaxed.
She's good on her word, this
Yes.
woman.